She was alone for Thanksgiving with her daughter until the CEO's mom said, "Pretend to be my son's family." She wasn't expecting anyone. No invitations, no family. Just one more Thanksgiving alone. Her daughter, a small pie she bought on sale, and a brave little smile. She wasn't planning to leave the apartment at all. But life has a way of knocking when you least expect it. Before we continue, if you enjoy touching and inspiring stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Now, let's get back to the story. Earlier that afternoon, on their way back from the grocery store, Mia had stopped at the small bench near the courtyard. A woman sat there, elegant, quiet, with the kind of sadness children notice. Mia had walked up to her without fear and handed her a tiny yellow paper flower. "This is for you," she had said, "so you don't feel alone." The woman had smiled, soft and grateful. "Thank you, sweetheart," she'd whispered. "I'll return it when I have something just as special." Lila didn't think much of it at the time, but she would. That evening, the apartment felt too quiet, the kind of quiet that wasn't peaceful, just empty. Lila set the pie on the counter and tried to make the small space feel warm, but silence pressed in from every corner. Mia tugged her sleeve. "Mommy, is it just us again?" Lila brushed a braid behind Mia's ear and forced a smile she'd practiced too many times. "It's Thanksgiving, honey. Us is enough." She hugged her daughter, and for a moment she almost believed it. Then a knock echoed softly through the apartment. Lila froze. She wasn't expecting anyone, not today, not ever, really. She opened the door just a few inches, and there she was, Eleanor Langford, impeccably dressed, calm as ever, holding a velvet clutch and a tiny yellow paper flower. Lila blinked. Mia's eyes lit up. "That's mine!" The girl rushed forward, her little red shoes tapping quickly. "I gave that to you on the bench." Eleanor bent gracefully, smiling. "Yes, you did, and I promised to return it when I had something just as special in return." She turned to Lila, rising. "I hope I'm not intruding." Lila hesitated. I didn't know you were coming here." "I wasn't," Eleanor said, with a faint smile. "I came for you." Lila stood there, stunned. She looked around her small apartment, the cheap pie, the folded blanket, the quiet that felt too heavy for a holiday meant to be full. Eleanor didn't flinch at any of it. "I'd like to borrow your family," she said plainly. "Just for today." Lila blinked again. I'm not sure what you mean." Eleanor turned to Mia. "Do you like turkey, sweetheart?" Mia nodded slowly. "Good, then it's settled." Lila didn't know if this was a test, a prank, or some strange society joke she wasn't prepared for. "I have a table," Eleanor said quietly. "A son who won't come unless I play my last card. And a plan that well, a little heart." Then softer, so only Lila could hear. "He's brilliant, but blind. I want him to see you." A pause. Mia was already holding Eleanor's hand, so Lila said the one thing she never expected to say this Thanksgiving. "Okay." 10 minutes later, Layla was staring out the window of a luxury sedan, watching the neighborhood drift behind them. Porches lit with warm lights, families gathering, shadows moving behind drawn curtains. It all felt like a movie she wasn't invited to be in. The car smelled like leather and eucalyptus. Mia was giggling in the back seat, playing with the seat warmer buttons and asking about Eleanor's earrings. The woman answered each question with queenly grace, smiling, never patronizing. Lila sat beside her, unsure what to do with her hands. "Where are we going?" she asked at last. "My home," Eleanor replied. "Grayson's already there?" "Not yet." She said it without looking over. "But he will be, once he hears you're there." Layla laughed nervously. "I think you may have overestimated my appeal." "I've underestimated it before," Eleanor said. "I won't do it again." Lila turned to her, confused. But Eleanor changed the subject. "You brought pie, didn't you?" Lila nodded. "Good," she smiled. "You'll need it." They arrived at a stone-walled estate that looked like it belonged on the cover of a winter home catalog. Fireplaces sculpted, candles in crystal, kitchens with staff, and yet the house felt quietly expectant. Mia ran ahead, twirling in the foyer as the skirt of her red plaid dress flared out like a spinning ornament. Eleanor led them in with quiet confidence. "The table's set. Dinner is in exactly 1 hour." "I don't know if I should." "You should." Eleanor handed her a delicate gold hair clip. It looked old and cherished. Lila hesitated. "It was mine," Eleanor said. "I wore it the night I met his father." Lila held it carefully. "I'm not trying to trick him," she said gently. "I'm not asking you to," Eleanor replied. "I'm asking you to remind him of things he's forgotten." Then, with a soft smile, she left them to get ready. By the time they sat down to dinner, the dining room glowed in golden tones, candles flickering against polished glass and silver. An instrumental melody drifted softly, warm, subtle, familiar. Lila sat across from an empty chair, Eleanor to her left, Mia to her right. And then footsteps, deep, slow, certain. Grayson Langford entered the room like a question that already knew the answer. He stopped. His eyes met Lila's, then dropped to Mia, then back to his mother. "I didn't agree to this." Eleanor lifted her glass. "No, you didn't." Grayson turned to leave. Mia's voice stopped him. "Your mom said you were lonely." He turned back slowly and stared. "She said I could lend you my family," Mia said. Lila flushed but stayed quiet. Grayson's jaw flexed. "Is that what this is?" Eleanor stood walking to him. "This is Thanksgiving. You can be angry tomorrow." Then she handed him something from her coat pocket. A paper flower, yellow, a little bent. He took it, stared at it, and then, without a word, sat down, opposite Lila. No one breathed. Then a fork dropped. Lila smiled. "That's Mia's way of starting dinner." Mia giggled, and the tension cracked, just a little. Grayson exhaled, leaning back. "I don't eat pie." Lila nodded. "That's all right. It's not for everyone." "I didn't say I couldn't eat it, just that I don't." There was a beat. Eleanor lifted her glass again, to pretending, and perhaps, eventually, forgetting which part was pretend. Glasses clinked, candles flickered, and in the flicker, Lila saw it. Grayson was pretending too. Not just at dinner, with everything. He glanced across the table at Mia, then at Lila, and said with measured coldness, "So tell me, Miss Carter, who exactly told you this was a good idea?" Lila didn't answer right away. She looked at him, the storm behind his eyes, the sharp line of his jaw, the way he seemed to be calculating every word like a lawyer in court. She could have told him the truth, that she didn't want to be there, that she hadn't come chasing a place at his perfect table, that she had been humiliated once today and had no intention of repeating it. But Mia was watching. Mia was. So instead, Lila took a breath, lifted her glass, and said calmly, "I didn't come for you, Mr. Langford. I came for the pie." Mia smiled. Eleanor smirked behind her wine. Grayson didn't. "I see," he said, setting down his napkin, like he was already planning his escape. Eleanor cleared her throat. "Lila, dear, would you mind helping me in the kitchen? There's a sauce I left warming too long. I trust you more than the chef." Lila knew the request wasn't about sauce. She stood, nodded to Mia to stay seated, and followed Eleanor down the hallway. The moment they turned the corner, Lila whispered, "I think this was a mistake." Eleanor stopped by a marble counter, her expression calm but firm. "No, it wasn't." "He doesn't want me here?" "Grayson doesn't want anyone here." Lila looked down. "This isn't some fairy tale, Eleanor. I'm not going to thaw him with pie and small talk." "Maybe not," she said, reaching for a bottle of red wine. "But if you keep being exactly who you are, you might remind him he's not made of stone. I'm not here to fix anyone." "I know, that's why you just might." There was a pause. the quiet kind. The kind that says more than either woman was ready to admit. Back in the dining room, Mia had started telling Grayson about the paper flower, how she had made it from an old grocery list while waiting for the bus, how Eleanor had smiled at her, even though she looked like a lady from TV. Grayson sat stiffly, unsure what to do with a child talking to him like he was a person and not a CEO. "You really made that?" he asked her, picking up the crinkled yellow shape. Mia nodded proudly. "And I didn't even ask for anything in return. That's what makes it a gift." Grayson glanced at her, then at the kitchen door, and something flickered. Not a smile, but not ice either. When Lila returned with Eleanor, she paused in the doorway just for a moment, watching her daughter sit at a table with a man who clearly didn't know how to bend, but hadn't run away yet. It was something. The meal itself passed in slow waves, moments of quiet, then warmth, then a sudden comment from Mia that lightened the room. At one point, she asked Grayson, "Why don't you smile with your teeth?" Eleanor choked on her wine. Lila blinked, mortified. Grayson raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me," Mia shrugged. "You smile, but not with your teeth. My teacher says that means you're still hiding something." He stared at her for a beat. Then, to everyone's shock, he let out the smallest, almost reluctant laugh. "Your teacher sounds nosy." "She's the best," Mia said proudly, and went back to her mashed potatoes. Eleanor leaned toward Lila, whispering, "You owe me nothing, but if he doesn't see it tonight, that's his failure." "Not yours? I'm not trying to make him see anything." Eleanor looked at her knowingly. "Yes, you are. You just don't know it yet." The plates were cleared, dessert was served, and when the pie came to the table, slightly cracked, homemade, humble, Mia clapped her hands like it was a cake made of gold. Lila cut 3 slices. Grayson didn't protest this time. He didn't ask for it either, but he let it sit on his plate. Then quietly, after a few minutes, he took one bite. Just one. He didn't say anything after, but Lila caught it, the way his fingers curled slightly around the edge of the plate. The pause before he set his fork down. He had expected it to taste cheap. It didn't. And something about that realization seemed to bother him more than he wanted to admit. Eleanor excused herself a bit later, claiming she had a call to return. It wasn't subtle. Now Lila and Grayson were alone at the table. Mia having wandered off to explore the music room with a sleepy curiosity. Lila reached for her water glass. She's not usually this bold, but sometimes she surprises me. She's sharp. "Careful," Lila said, half smiling. That almost sounded like a compliment. Grayson leaned back in his chair. "I don't like being manipulated. I don't like being ambushed." They looked at each other. A beat passed. Then 2. She stood slowly and began gathering plates, as if retreating was the safest option. "Why did my mother choose you?" Lila paused. "You'd have to ask her." "I'm asking you." She looked at him. "She said you were lonely, and I know what that feels like." I guess she thought maybe we'd understand each other, even just for one night. Grayson's jaw tightened again. "Next time she tries something like this, don't say yes." "I wasn't planning to." "Good." But when Lila turned to take the dishes to the kitchen, Grayson's voice stopped her again. "That pie, it reminded me of something." She looked back. He didn't finish the sentence, just stared at the half-empty plate. Then, under his breath, barely audible, "My father used to make one just like it." A quiet descended over the room, and then a door creaked at the end of the hall. Eleanor was gone, but someone else had just walked in. A woman in designer heels, sharp smile, confident air, a folder in her hand. Vanessa stood at the edge of the dining room, manicured fingers wrapped tightly around a sleek leather folder. She looked like a person who knew exactly how much power she held and how to use it without raising her voice. She was everything Lila wasn't, and she made sure Lila felt it. I didn't realize this dinner came with guests, Vanessa said, eyes narrowing slightly on Lila before drifting toward Mia, who had reappeared holding a silver spoon like a tiny explorer. Grayson straightened his back, his voice low but firm. Vanessa, not tonight. She tilted her head, giving him a familiar smile, the kind people wear when they think they've already won. I brought the final draft of the Donnelly proposal. I thought we could go over it before the team call in the morning. Her tone was casual, but her eyes were sharp. Lila stayed quiet. She could have excused herself. She could have disappeared into the hallway and waited until it was over. But Mia was there, watching. So Lila stood her ground. Vanessa turned back to Grayson. You said you were spending the holiday alone. I changed my mind. Vanessa gave a light laugh, but it didn't reach her eyes. Since when do you do that? Eleanor's voice rang out from behind them. Since I reminded him he's not made of marble. Everyone turned. She walked in slowly, elegant as ever, holding a small tray of chocolates. Would you like to sit, Vanessa? We were just having dessert. Vanessa blinked. She hadn't expected the matriarch to be part of the evening. I didn't mean to interrupt, she said, voice suddenly softer. Eleanor smiled, setting the tray down. Oh, I'm sure you did. But that's all right. There was a long silence. Then Mia, bless her brave little heart, stepped forward and pointed to the empty chair beside her. You can sit here if you want, but the pie's all gone. Vanessa looked down at the girl as if unsure what to make of the invitation. I'm not hungry, she said. That's okay, Mia replied. Sometimes people say that when their feelings are full instead of their bellies. The room fell silent. Even Eleanor raised an eyebrow. Grayson let out a tiny cough that could have almost been a laugh, if he allowed himself those. Vanessa gave a tight smile and placed the folder on the table. I'll leave this with you, she said to Grayson. Then to Eleanor, Happy Thanksgiving. And to Lila, with a glance that wasn't quite a smile. Nice to meet you. She left with the scent of designer perfume lingering behind her like an afterthought. As the front door clicked shut, Eleanor leaned in toward Mia and whispered, That was very brave. Mia whispered back, Was it rude? Eleanor shook her head. No, darling. It was necessary. Lila exhaled slowly. She hadn't realized she'd been holding her breath. Grayson picked up the folder and set it aside without opening it. His jaw was tense again, his eyes unreadable. I thought you ended things with her, Eleanor said quietly. I did, Grayson replied. She just doesn't accept endings. Lila pushed her chair back. I think Mia's getting tired. We should... Wait. Grayson's voice was sudden. She looked at him. He hesitated, then gestured toward the living room. There's a fireplace. And Coco, if she wants. Mia's eyes lit up. Coco, she said, instantly forgetting every bit of exhaustion she'd just been miming. There might be marshmallows, Eleanor added with a wink. Lila looked at her daughter, then at Grayson. She nodded. A few minutes later, Mia was curled on the couch with a blanket too big for her shoulders and a mug too warm for her little hands. Eleanor had slipped away to make a phone call, and the living room had gone quiet. Grayson stood at the window watching the snow start to fall. Just a few scattered flakes, but enough to soften the edges of the evening. Lila sat across from him, the flicker of the fireplace warming one side of her face. She doesn't like me, Lila said, meaning Vanessa. She doesn't know you. That's not always required. He looked at her. Eyes cool. You don't owe her anything. I know, but I do owe her type. Every time they stare at me like I'm in the wrong room. Grayson tilted his head. You care what she thinks? Lila shook her head. No, I just care that Mia sees it. I don't ever want her to think kindness is weakness. He considered that for a moment. Was this night hard for you? She smiled softly. Harder than pie should be, easier than I expected. Somehow both. Grayson took a slow sip of his own cocoa, no marshmallows, and set the mug down. Earlier, he said almost reluctantly, you said something about understanding loneliness. I didn't mean it as an accusation. I didn't take it as one. A pause. Then, quieter. My mother sees things other people don't. She probably saw something in you I haven't yet. Lila met his eyes. Then maybe the pie was premature. He gave the faintest smile. I didn't say I didn't like it. Lila felt something shift. Not much, just a thread, but enough to notice. Mia had fallen asleep now, curled against the side cushion, her tiny paper flower sticking out of her dress pocket, the soft yellow crumple peeking out like a secret still waiting to bloom. Grayson followed Lila's gaze. She gave that to my mother? She said, it's what you do when someone looks sad and doesn't say it out loud. Grayson looked at Mia for a long time. Then, without looking at Lila, she's a good kid. She is. She deserves better than this. Lila turned to him, unsure what he meant. Then he added quietly, than being a placeholder in someone else's story. Her heart pinched, but before she could answer, a chime sounded from the hallway. Eleanor stepped in, holding her phone. There's something you need to see, she said, her voice suddenly different. She handed the phone to Grayson. He read the screen, his jaw tensed. Lila sat up straighter. What is it? Grayson looked at her, the warmth gone from his eyes again. There's a photo circulating on a private investor group thread. He turned the screen to her. It was a picture of the dining room, of them, her, Mia, Grayson, the table, and above it a single caption. Looks like Langford's already found a replacement family. Leela stared at the photo. It was beautiful in a way. The warm light, the cozy table, the child mid-laugh, Grayson half smiling, the soft flicker of candles and pie. But in the context of that caption, it twisted into something dangerous. She felt the warmth drain from her hands. Grayson's jaw was locked, his grip on the phone tightening. Eleanor spoke softly. It's spreading, quickly. Only private forums for now, but you know how fast these things slip? He didn't respond. Lila sat back slowly on the couch, her breath catching in her chest. Who took that picture? Grayson looked up. Probably Vanessa, or someone she forwarded it to. She was only here for 5 minutes, Eleanor muttered. Long enough. Lila glanced at Mia, still asleep, unaware of the storm rising just outside the frame of her small, brave world. I should go, she said, standing quietly. No, Eleanor replied instantly. Don't. She's right, Grayson said, standing as well. This complicates everything. Lila looked at him, surprised by the coldness in his tone. I didn't ask to be part of your everything, Mr. Langford. And yet, here we are. There it was again, on that edge in his voice. The defense mechanism of a man too used to protecting his name to remember when to protect a person. Eleanor stepped forward. Grayson? But Lila raised a hand gently, stopping her. She turned back to Grayson. You think I staged this? That I brought my daughter here to be seen with you? To make some move on your reputation? He looked at her, but didn't answer. I didn't want to come in the first place, she said quietly. You were the one who said yes to sitting down. You were the one who stayed, not me. There was something almost apologetic in his eyes now, but not enough. I know what this world thinks of people like me, she added. I've heard those whispers all my life, but don't confuse quiet for weak. I won't apologize for making your photo look like a real family. That landed. Even Eleanor blinked at the weight of it. Grayson didn't speak again, not right away. So Lila bent down, gently picked Mia up from the couch, and whispered, We're going home now, sweetheart. Mia stirred, but didn't protest, just wrapped her arms around her mother's neck and leaned in with the trust only children and fools give freely. Eleanor walked with them to the door. Let me at least send you with something warm, she said softly, disappearing into the kitchen. Grayson remained in the living room, staring at the fire like it might burn away the parts of him that still didn't know how to speak like a man, not a company. Lila adjusted Mia's little coat and turned to look back at him one last time. You could have just said thank you. Grayson opened his mouth. But it was too late. The door closed behind her. Outside, the snow had begun to fall in earnest, not heavy but steady, like a gentle silence covering everything. Eleanor returned a moment later holding a folded napkin. Inside, a single piece of pie, wrapped carefully. It's not for you, she told her son. It's for her, for when she gets home and realizes how much this night cost her, just so you wouldn't be alone. Grayson didn't move. She was never after your name, Grayson, Eleanor said. She was after a little piece, a memory, something warm to carry through a hard season. She has no idea what kind of damage this could do. She has every idea. And she walked in anyway. Grayson looked at the empty couch, the half-drunk cocoa mug, the tiny yellow paper flower still wedged between the cushions. The weight of it all pressed down, and he finally sat. He didn't say a word. At the same time, blocks away, Leila carried Mia into their small apartment. It was quiet, a little chilly, and dimly lit by the porch light through the window. She laid her daughter on the couch, took off her shoes, and covered her with a blanket. As she set her coat aside, she reached into the pocket and found something crumpled. The yellow paper flower. Eleanor must have slipped it back to her before she left. Then, as she turned to head into the kitchen, she noticed the napkin in her bag, not the pie. She almost smiled. But her phone buzzed. A message from her coworker at the bookstore. Is this you in this photo? Girl, you're viral in the worst way. Lila clicked the link. Same photo, same caption, but this time... But it wasn't a private investor group. It was public. Comments were rolling in. Single mom climbs her way into billionaire's family dinner. New girlfriend? Or gold digger with a kid? Wasn't he seeing that executive woman? Lila dropped the phone on the counter and leaned against the sink, her hands trembling. She had worked so hard to keep her life quiet, to raise Mia without drama, without headlines, without anyone thinking she'd used her daughter for anything. And now this. She covered her face with her hands, letting the sting rise and settle. She wouldn't cry in front of Mia. She never did, but this time, it was close. She walked into the bathroom, splashed her face with water, and when she returned, Mia was still sleeping soundly. But in her tiny hands, she was clutching another paper flower she had made earlier that week. Mia always made more than one. Lila sat beside her, brushing a curl off her forehead. A knock sounded at the door. She froze, not late enough to be a neighbor, too late to be a friend. Carefully, she set Mia's hand down, stood, and opened the door just a few inches. Eleanor Langford stood there, her beige coat buttoned up to the neck, eyes sharper than ever. I need to speak with you, she said. Then, a pause. And you may want to sit down before you hear what my son just did. Lila stepped back and opened the door just enough for Eleanor to enter. She didn't speak right away, just walked inside with the same quiet dignity she always carried, even when the world around her was burning. Lila glanced toward the couch where Mia was still asleep, the little girl's hand wrapped loosely around that crumpled yellow paper flower. Eleanor noticed it too. She held it the whole time, Lila said softly, even while sleeping. Eleanor nodded, her gaze lingering. I think she knew she might need it. Lila didn't know what to say to that. So she moved to the small table near the window and gestured for Eleanor to sit. I won't stay long, Eleanor said, removing her gloves, but you need to know what happened before you find out some colder way. Lila sat across from her, bracing herself. Grayson didn't wait for PR, Eleanor began. Didn't wait for the board. The moment you walked out, he made a decision. Lila stared at her. What kind of decision? He issued a public statement. Lila blinked. About me? About the photo, about the dinner, about your daughter. Her heart thudded. Eleanor leaned in slightly, her voice calm but firm. He said the image wasn't staged, that the dinner was real, that no one was used, and no one had anything to gain. except perhaps a memory they weren't expecting. Lila's mouth parted slightly, her breath catching. He defended me? He didn't just defend you, he claimed responsibility, said he invited you. Said Mia was welcome, and said that anyone questioning your character or hers was no longer welcome in his circle. Lila sat back in her chair, stunned. He didn't hesitate, Eleanor said, not even when his assistant told him the investor line might shake. Why? Eleanor smiled. I think that's a question you'll need to ask him. Silence settled between them. I thought he was embarrassed, Lila admitted. Ashamed. He's spent most of his life trying not to feel anything that would slow him down, but you slowed him, in the best way. Lila looked away out the window. The snow was heavier now, soft, steady. I'm not sure I want to be part of anyone's lesson, she whispered. You weren't, Eleanor said gently. You were part of his awakening. Lila was quiet. After a moment, Eleanor stood. She pulled something from her coat pocket and placed it on the table, a printout of Grayson's statement already circulating online. You don't owe him anything, she said, but I think you deserve to read it. When you're ready. Lila nodded, not trusting her voice. Eleanor started for the door, then paused and turned back. I don't know where this goes, but I do know you didn't imagine tonight. Neither did he. And with that, she left. Lila sat still for a long while after. The heater kicked on. The pipes clanked faintly. She stared at the paper in front of her, but didn't touch it, not yet. Instead, she got up, walked over to the couch, and sat beside Mia, pulling her little girl gently into her lap. Mia stirred and blinked up at her. Is it still Thanksgiving? It is, Lila whispered, but only for a little longer. Mia yawned and snuggled in closer. Was I good tonight? You were perfect. Mia touched the flower in her hand. I gave her this so she wouldn't feel alone. I think it worked. Mia looked up. Is she still alone? Lila swallowed. Maybe a little less. They stayed there in silence, wrapped in a quiet warmth that had nothing to do with blankets. Later, after Mia had gone to bed, Lila sat at the table again. She unfolded the paper and read Grayson's words. Every line. They were firm, precise, not poetic, but real. Honest in a way that cost something. She read it twice. Then she folded it back up and slid it into a drawer right beside a box of old letters and a faded baby bracelet. She didn't cry. She didn't smile either, but something in her chest loosened. The next morning came with cold air and early sunlight filtering through the windows. Lila made Mia a warm breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, and apple slices shaped like stars. It was their small tradition after a long day. Mia ate happily, asking if they could go to the library later. Lila promised they would, but just as she started clearing the plates, her phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't gossip. It was an email. Subject, private and personal, from Grayson Langford Body. I'll be outside your bookstore at 3 p.m. I won't come in. You don't have to respond. Just, if you're curious. There was no signature, no pressure, just a quiet invitation. Lila stood there holding the phone, heart picking up its pace. Outside, the sun was melting the last traces of snow from the railing. And in the living room, the little yellow flower sat by the windowsill, watching the world change again. The bookstore was quiet, not silent. The hum of the heater, the occasional chime from the front bell, and the gentle rustle of turning pages all whispered around Lila as she restocked the children's shelf near the window. But it was quiet enough to hear the thoughts she didn't want, especially one in particular. 3 p.m. her eyes drifted to the wall clock again. 2:43. She reached for another copy of Goodnight Moon, hand steady, though her heart wasn't. The email had arrived just after breakfast. No demands, no questions, no pressure. I'll be outside your bookstore at 3 p.m. I won't come in. You don't have to respond. Just, if you're curious. No name signed, no punctuation except that last one, and yet it was the most direct thing he'd ever said to her. She hadn't replied, hadn't told Eleanor or Emily, or even written about it in the little leather journal she kept under the counter, but she hadn't deleted it either. "Hey," came a voice from the cafe side of the shop. "Why do you look like you just got proposed to and audited at the same time?" Lila glanced up to see Emily approaching with 2 steaming mugs and a look of inappropriate glee. Her apron was dusted in cinnamon foam, her red hair pulled up in a messy knot that somehow still looked intentional. "I don't know what you're talking about," Lila muttered. Emily handed her one of the mugs. "Then why have you been adjusting the same 3 books for the last 10 minutes, like you're trying to read Morse code through the spine?" Lila let out a laugh, small, grateful. Emily tilted her head. "Is this about him?" "I don't know," Lila said honestly. "I saw the email," Emily teased, lowering her voice. "I saw the way your eyebrows moved when you opened it. That's the 'this man makes me nervous in a good bad way' face." Lila groaned, resting her forehead against the shelf. "Please don't narrate my life." "Too late. I've already written the movie version in my head. He's tall, stormy, you're warm, wounded, there's pie. Maybe a bakery in Paris by part 3? Lila smiled despite herself. "You're insane." "I'm invested," Emily corrected. Lila peeked through the front window and froze. Across the street, in front of the little park bench just outside the used record shop, stood Grayson Langford, coat dark as charcoal, shoulders squared, a paper bag in one hand, gloves in the other. He wasn't scrolling his phone, wasn't pacing, just waiting, looking. "I think I'm going to throw up," Lila whispered. Emily squealed and ducked beneath the window like a spy. "Oh my gosh!" "He's actually here. He's punctual. That's hotter than it should be." Lila looked at the clock. 2:58. "Should I go?" she asked aloud. Emily straightened, eyes wide. "Yes. I mean, should I go out there?" Emily looked at her friend, at the tension in her shoulders, the way she held the mug too tight, the way her breath had changed. And then, more gently this time, "Do you want to?" Lila didn't answer, but she pulled on her coat. The cold hit her cheeks the moment she stepped outside. Crisp and clean, the kind of late autumn air that felt like the world holding its breath before winter. She crossed the street slowly, hands inside her sleeves, her boots quiet on the sidewalk. Grayson turned as she approached. His expression was unreadable, but his posture softened when he saw her. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said. "I wasn't sure either," she replied. They stood like that for a few seconds. 2 people with too much history for how little they actually knew each other. The wind moved between them like a pause they hadn't filled yet. "I brought something," he said finally, lifting the paper bag. "I don't know if it's the right kind of offering." "What is it?" "A scone. From that cafe on 9th. You said once their cinnamon ones were better than forgiveness," Lila blinked. Surprised. "I said that?" "You did. And you remembered?" "I remembered more than I wanted to, honestly." She took the bag from him, hesitating before looking inside. The scone sat warm and fresh, wrapped in a napkin. She unfolded it and stopped. Drawn on the napkin, a little yellow flower. Hand-sketched in simple ink, slightly bent, a crumpled stem, the same shape Mia had crafted on Thanksgiving Day. "She gave you this?" He nodded. "I kept it in my pocket. Didn't mean to. It just stayed there." She stared at it, then closed the bag slowly. "Why are you here, Grayson?" "I wanted to say I was wrong." "About what?" He looked at her, fully now. "You, her, the dinner, the story I told myself that you were just passing through, trying to take something, that you were another headline waiting to happen." Layla said nothing, but her jaw clenched faintly. "I've spent a long time managing what things look like," he continued, at the cost of actually feeling any of them. "That night, it was messy, but it was real." She glanced down. "I didn't want to be part of your chaos. I know, that's why it hurt more." The wind rustled the branches above them. Grayson stepped just a little closer, but not enough to cross the line she hadn't drawn yet. "I'm not here to fix it, or to ask for anything." "Then why?" He hesitated. "Because I didn't want your last memory of me to be me protecting a name instead of a person." That landed. She felt it settle in her chest like a warm stone. "I don't know what to do with all this," she whispered. "I have a daughter, a quiet life. I was never trying to step into your world." "I know." She looked at him again. "And you think just showing up with a scone and a napkin is enough?" "No," he said. "But I hoped it might be a start." She held his gaze. And for a moment, a fragile, suspended second, it looked like she might take a step toward him. Might say something her heart wasn't ready for but almost understood. But instead she smiled softly. "Just curiosity then?" He nodded. "We can start there." Behind them, across the street, Emily was watching through the bookstore window like a spy with terrible boundaries. And in her hand, held up against the glass, was a receipt with a message scribbled in lipstick. "If you don't marry him, I will." Monday came like a wave Lila wasn't ready for. She'd hoped the weekend buzz would die down, that people would move on to the next rumor, that the photo would fade behind something shinier, messier, or more scandalous. But reality, as always, had other plans. By 8:05 a.m., she already had 2 missed calls from the school and 1 message from the teacher's aide. "Hi, Lila. We're having some issues this morning. Nothing urgent, just we'd love to talk before pickup today." Those last 6 words were always worse than any headline. Before pickup. She walked Mia into school like usual. The sidewalk was wet from melted snow, and Mia's little red boots made cheerful sounds as she stomped through puddles. Layla held her hand tighter than usual. At the gate, other parents looked up. Some smiled too quickly. Others avoided her completely. One woman whispered something behind her scarf. Another took a photo of her and Mia. Lila crouched by her daughter and zipped her coat gently. "You okay, baby?" Mia shrugged. "I think so. 2 girls said I was famous, but they said it in a weird way." Lila's heart ached. "Famous isn't always a good thing." "Am I in trouble?" "No," she said softly. "You didn't do anything wrong, but everyone's looking at us." Lila looked around, then leaned in and kissed her daughter's forehead. "That's their problem." Mia nodded and squeezed her hand before running inside. And Lila stood there for a moment longer than she meant to, just watching the door close behind her little girl and wondering how something as warm as Thanksgiving could have spiraled into this. By noon, the bookstore felt like a safe cave again. Until her phone rang. The school. She answered immediately. "Lila, hi, it's Ms. Collins." "Hi." "Nothing serious, I promise. Mia's doing well. But I wanted to flag something that's come up." Lila's stomach tightened. "Some of the older students have been showing their parents' phones around." "The photo, the posts. There was some teasing." Lila closed her eyes. "Has she said anything?" "No, but she seemed quiet this morning, withdrawn. She's usually shy." This was different. Lila nodded, even though no one could see it. "We just wanted you to know," Ms. Collins added gently, "and to remind you, if this continues, we may need to speak with the principal. Not because of you, because of how the other students, and some parents, are reacting." Lila swallowed. "Because she's in a picture. Because some people forget she's a child." That night, Lila didn't say much to Mia. She just made her favorite meal, cheesy shells with broccoli, orange slices on the side, and a little scoop of vanilla ice cream afterward. Mia didn't ask why. She just smiled and said, "This is my cozy food." "I know." After dinner, they cuddled on the couch and watched a cartoon neither of them really followed. The flowers sat on the windowsill like always. Mia eventually fell asleep in Lila's lap, her cheek resting just above Lila's heart. Lila didn't move, didn't scroll her phone, didn't cry. She just held her daughter. Until a knock on the door startled her. She gently eased Mia down, grabbed the blanket, and walked quietly to the entryway. Through the peephole, Grayson. She hesitated, opened it slowly. His expression was uncertain, guarded but softer than before. "I heard about the school," he said. "News travels fast." "Not fast enough," he replied. "I should have seen this coming." "It's not your job to see my life coming." He looked down. "Maybe not. But I hate that she's paying the price for something that wasn't her fault." "Or yours." Lila crossed her arms. "I told you I never wanted this." "I know. She's just a little girl." "I know." The quiet between them thickened, then softly, "I want to help." "You can't." He looked at her. "You can't fix this with a press release, or a donation, or a speech. This is real. This is my child being whispered about on playgrounds. I'm not trying to buy my way out of this, Lila." "Then what are you trying to do?" He reached into his coat pocket, pulled something out, held it in his palm. A small, laminated photo. The one from Thanksgiving. The same image that had gone viral. But this version was different. Someone had cropped out the caption, brightened the colors, printed it on soft photo paper, laminated it carefully, as if to preserve something fragile. He handed it to her without a word. Lila stared at it. The glow of the candles, Mia's laugh, her own face, relaxed. Grayson looking toward them both with something that almost looked like peace. Not power, not pride, just peace. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," he said, "but maybe we can give her another memory, one that's hers, not the internet's." Lila looked up at him, really looked, and for the first time, she saw the man behind the CEO, not polished, not perfect, just trying. "She made you a flower," Lila whispered, "and the world made it a headline." "I know." "She's 6. "I know," Lila swallowed. "If you want to help, be kind when she's watching." Grayson nodded. "Always." There was a pause, then a voice, soft, sleepy, from behind her. "Mommy?" Mia stood by the couch, hair tousled, eyes drowsy. Grayson straightened. Lila turned and bent down. "Come here, love." Mia shuffled closer, rubbing her eyes. Grayson crouched slowly at her level. "I brought you something," he said. She blinked up at him. "What is it?" He reached into his other pocket and pulled out a tiny wooden flower, carved gently, roughly painted yellow with a small green base. "I tried to make one like yours," he said. "I think I'm bad at it." Mia smiled sleepily. "No, it's perfect." She took it from him carefully, and then, to Lila's astonishment, handed him hers, the paper one. "Now you have one too," she said, "so you don't forget." Grayson looked at the crushed paper, and for a second, just a second, his eyes betrayed him. He nodded. "I won't forget." Lila wrapped her arms around Mia and kissed her temple. "Let's go back to sleep, sweetheart." Mia looked at Grayson. "Are you staying?" He paused. "I'll go now, but maybe next time I can bring the scone." Mia yawned. "Only if it has sugar on top." "I'll see what I can do." They said goodbye at the door. Lila closed it gently behind him, and for a long moment she just stood there, holding the wooden flower, the photo in her hand, and the weight of a future that didn't feel quite as lonely as it had before. Then her phone vibrated on the table. A new email. Subject, meeting request. Principal's office body. "We'd like to speak with you regarding Mia Carter's presence in the recent media coverage." The school smelled like disinfectant and printer paper, bright lights, gray carpet. That thin layer of tension only adults can feel. Lila sat in the front office with her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Mia by her side, coloring quietly with a pink marker. Her backpack leaned against Lila's feet like a small, loyal shadow. She had arrived 5 minutes early for the meeting, not out of fear, out of intention. She wanted them to know she respected the system, even if the system didn't always respect people like her. Across the room, a staff assistant glanced at them, then quickly looked back at her screen. No smile, no warmth. Lila exhaled slowly. "Miss Carter?" came a voice. Firm, polished. She turned. The principal stood by the hallway door, hands folded neatly in front of her gray blazer. "We're ready for you." Lila rose, reached for Mia's hand, but the principal gently stopped her. "She can stay here for now." Lila crouched beside her daughter. "I'll be right back, okay?" Mia nodded, unbothered. "I'm finishing a butterfly." Lila followed the principal down a hallway that echoed with every step. Photos of former students lined the walls. Achievements, trophies, clean smiles, frozen in time. When they entered the office, 2 other people were already seated. The vice principal and a woman from the school board, whose presence was unexpected and unwelcome. There were pleasantries offered and declined. Then the principal folded her hands atop the table. "We want to begin by saying this isn't a disciplinary meeting," Lila nodded. "Good, because my daughter hasn't done anything wrong." A pause. The school board rep cleared her throat. "No one is blaming Mia," she said, as if gently correcting a child. "But recent exposure surrounding your family has raised concerns." "Several parents have reached out." Lila tilted her head slightly. "Concerns about what exactly?" "About the environment, the reputation of the classroom, distractions," the woman said. "When a child becomes associated with public drama, it can create disruption." Lila's hands remained folded. Her eyes never dropped. "So this is about a photo." The vice principal stepped in. "It's not just the photo, Miss Carter. It's the conversation around it." "Conversations," Lila said softly, "are not my daughter's fault." "Of course not," the board member said. "But perception matters. Parents talk. They want assurance that their children's environment remains appropriate." Lila smiled. It was small, polite, and sharp. "I see." The principal shifted. "We're simply exploring ways to minimize disruption. Perhaps it would be best if Mia took a short leave, a week or so, until things quiet down." Lila let the words settle in the room like cold air. "A child, 6 years old, asked to disappear so adults could avoid discomfort." Lila straightened. "No." The woman blinked. "I'm sorry?" "I said no. My daughter isn't a scandal. She's not a marketing accident. She's not a hashtag." The vice principal spoke more softly. "We just want to protect her." "So do I," Lila said, her voice clear. "And removing her from her routine, her friends, her learning, that's not protection. That's punishment." The room quieted. Lila stood. "If a parent has a problem, they can bring it to me directly. I'm not hard to find. But I will not let a room full of educated professionals suggest that a 6-year-old child should carry the shame for something she didn't create." She took a breath. Her heart was pounding. She wore a dress, ate pie, held a paper flower, and somehow that threatens people? None of them answered. "I'm not removing her. And if the school decides to push for it, I'll bring a lawyer or a camera. Whatever works faster these days." The board rep blinked, visibly stunned. But the principal cleared her throat. "That won't be necessary." "Good." Lila turned to leave, but paused at the door. "If you're going to judge her, at least say it out loud. Don't whisper while she's coloring butterflies." Then she walked out. Mia looked up from her drawing when Lila returned, holding up the picture with pride. "It's a monarch," she said, "but I gave it a crown." Lila smiled and kissed her forehead. "Come on, little queen, let's go." Outside, the wind had picked up, tossing Mia's braids gently as they walked hand in hand to the car. Lila felt the tears sting behind her eyes. But she kept them at bay. Not now, not in front of her. Halfway to the car, she heard someone call her name. She turned. Grayson stood beside his parked car, not in a suit, not in a tie, just a wool sweater and calm eyes. She stopped. "How did you—" "Eleanor," he said. "She called me the moment she heard about the school's response." "I handled it," Lila said quickly. "I know. She doesn't need your help." I know. But you came anyway. I did. There was a pause. I didn't want to come inside, he added. Didn't want to make it about me, but I needed to be near, just in case. Lila looked at him. She wanted to be angry, to push him away, to protect her peace. Her daughter, her boundaries. But instead she asked, "Have you ever had to sit in a room and defend your child's right to just exist?" He shook his head. "No, I haven't." "Then don't ever assume you understand." "I won't," he said, "but I'll stand behind you if you ask me to." Mia peeked up at him. "Did you bring a flower again?" He crouched with a small smile. "Not today, but I'm working on a better one." She tilted her head. "Can it be blue this time?" "I'll try." Lila watched them, her heart softening despite herself. They said goodbye again. Grayson didn't linger. He simply nodded once, respectfully, and walked back to his car. Lila turned to Mia. "You okay?" Mia nodded. "Are you okay?" Layla knelt and wrapped her in a hug. "I am now." That evening, as they settled into the couch with tea and toast, Lila noticed something tucked between the pages of Mia's backpack notebook, the paper flower. Still bent, a little faded, but intact. She hadn't lost it. She had kept it close to her, and folded inside it like a secret was a small slip of paper, a child's scribble. "When you feel small, remember you're still mine." Lila felt her throat close. Later that night, after Mia was asleep, her phone vibrated. It was a message from an unknown number. "Private event, Langford Foundation. Winter Gala, December 3rd. Children welcome, no press. I saved you 2 seats." No name, but she knew, and this time she didn't delete it. The Langford Foundation Winter Gala was not a party. It was a performance, a polished, candlelit ritual where names were worn like armor and reputation was currency. People didn't arrive. They were announced. Dresses shimmered, tuxedos gleamed, conversations danced on tightropes of power, status, and perception. And this year, the spotlight felt heavier than ever, because she was coming. Lila Carter, the woman from the photo, the mother with the pie, as one headline had called her. But none of that mattered to Mia, who at that exact moment was spinning in front of the mirror in a navy blue dress Eleanor had gifted her. It wasn't flashy, just soft velvet with a satin bow. The kind of dress that made a little girl feel important, without pretending to be someone else. Lila adjusted Mia's hair bow, then stood to finish pinning her own. Her dress was simple, an off-the-shoulder dark emerald green, borrowed from Eleanor, carefully altered by hand. No glitter, no jewelry, except the tiny gold teardrop necklace Mia had given her. "You look like a princess," Mia said. Eyes wide, Lila smiled. "So do you." Mia pointed to Lila's chest. "Did you wear the necklace?" "Always." They arrived just before the music started. The entry hall of the Langford estate had been transformed. Evergreens, soft golden lights, live piano drifting through the corridors. Waiters in black ties moved like shadows. Eyes turned as they stepped in, not because of their dresses, but because of their presence. Eleanor approached first, graceful as ever, her hair in an elegant twist, her smile warm. "You made it," she said, her voice low and full of something close to relief. "We said we would," Lila replied softly. Eleanor leaned closer. "You walked in like you belonged." "I do," Lila said, steady and quiet. Eleanor's lips curled into the proudest smile Lila had ever seen. Mia tugged her arm. "Do they have pie?" "Not tonight, darling," Eleanor said, kneeling. "But they do have chocolate truffles," Mia gasped. "That's almost as good," Lila laughed. As Eleanor and Mia wandered toward the dessert table, Lila stood alone near the archway, watching the room, the glances, the hushes, the looks of forced interest and concealed curiosity. She didn't flinch. She knew what they were thinking. There she is, that's her. What is she doing here? But what they didn't know was how much strength it took to stand there, not as a date, or a guest, or a decoration, but as herself. Then she felt it, a shift in the air. She turned, and there he was, Grayson Langford, tall, composed, tailored in a charcoal suit that made him look both powerful and slightly undone. His hair was a little tousled, his eyes not stormy tonight, something softer. He walked toward her slowly, never breaking eye contact, and when he stopped, just a breath away, he said one word. "You came. I told Mia we'd try. I wasn't sure you'd let me see you again." She asked about the truffles. He almost smiled. "May I?" he asked, gently offering his arm. Lila paused, then took it. The room took notice. They walked together slowly through the crowd, passing tables and murmured greetings. Some people smiled. Others watched like critics at a show they didn't understand. At one point, Vanessa passed by, dressed in crimson, beautiful, calculated. Her eyes landed on Lila, and then on Grayson's arm around hers. And for once, she didn't speak, just turned away. They reached the center of the ballroom, where a string quartet played a soft waltz. Couples swayed, lights glimmered. Grayson leaned close. "Grayson, we don't have to dance. I just wanted to walk with you. You don't seem like someone who does anything just." "I didn't used to." She looked up at him. "And now, I'm learning." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Lila whispered, "You know, I hated you for a minute. I deserved it. I wanted to delete that picture so badly I almost threw my phone out a window. I would have bought you a new one." She laughed. He looked at her. "No one's ever spoken to me the way you did," he said. "That's not a compliment." "It is," he said, "because it reminded me that I'm not the only one who's had to fight for something real." Across the room, Mia was twirling again, now with Eleanor, who was guiding her through a very serious chocolate truffle tasting. Grayson followed Lila's gaze. "She's lucky to have you." "I'm lucky to have her." "She said something the other night," he added, "about feelings being full. I haven't stopped thinking about that. She says things like that when I least expect it. She gets that from you." Lila looked down, and that's when she noticed. In his suit pocket, just barely visible, the crumpled yellow paper flower. Still there, still folded, still loved. She touched it lightly with her fingers, eyes flickering to his. "You kept it." "I told her I would." "And what about what you told me?" "I meant it." He looked at her. Fully. Openly. "I'm not perfect. I don't have a roadmap for this, but I'd like to find one. With you." Lila's breath caught. But before she could speak, a small hand slid into hers. "Mia." "I think we should dance," she said, looking up at both of them. "All of us, even if we don't know how." Lila smiled. Grayson crouched. "I don't know if I can keep up with your moves." Mia grinned. "That's okay. I'll teach you." They stepped into the circle of the ballroom, all three, and moved together to the soft rhythm of a slow violin. Not perfectly, not with practiced steps, but with something better, with laughter, with warmth, with something that looked suspiciously like a beginning, until a man approached Eleanor across the room, whispering something in her ear. Her face changed. Lila noticed, and before she could ask, Eleanor looked directly at her. "Lila," she said, her voice tight but calm, "we have a problem." Lila turned toward Eleanor, startled by the tone she hadn't heard before. Not in that voice. Sharp, controlled, quietly urgent. Grayson straightened, catching the shift instantly. "What is it?" Eleanor didn't waste time. "Come with me," she said, already walking briskly toward a side hallway. They followed her past the glimmer of crystal chandeliers and curated smiles, into a narrow gallery where the music and murmurs faded into stillness. A man stood there, mid-40s, sleek suit, phone in hand. "Mr. Calloway," Eleanor said, addressing the Langford Foundation's Director of Communications. "Explain." He glanced nervously between them. There's a document being passed around, he said. Internal board memo from 2018. It references a misappropriation of donor funds from a former division head, covered up quietly by Grayson and one other executive. Lila felt her stomach dip. Grayson's face went still. It's being framed, Calloway continued, as a cover-up for personal gain. The timing is bad. People are already speculating about everything, the photo, the statement you made, now this. I didn't profit from that, Grayson said evenly. We protected the foundation by removing the division head quietly. The board knew. But now someone's making it look like you hid it and used it to leverage media silence around your personal life. Lila blinked. So, they're accusing him of using me to distract from that? Calloway nodded. Yes, it's gaining traction. The whispers are getting teeth. Grayson's jaw flexed. Eleanor looked at her son. Who had access to that memo? He didn't answer at first, but Lila could see it in his eyes, the flash of recognition. Vanessa, he finally said. She worked directly under that division. She knew we closed it down quietly. She was bitter we didn't promote her after it. Eleanor exhaled through her nose. And now she wants to remove you by attacking your credibility, your judgment, and anyone close enough to wound. Lila felt like the floor shifted beneath her. Not because she didn't believe Grayson, but because she understood how fast reputations burned and how much ash they left behind. Mia was still inside, dancing, laughing, unaware of how quickly the adults around her were crumbling under the weight of perception. Lila turned to Grayson. What happens now? We respond, he said. We show transparency. We call a board vote before they try to force one. I lay it all out. And me? She asked softly. Do I become part of that? Grayson looked at her, and for once the confidence in his face flickered. You can step away, he said quietly. Right now, before it gets worse. I wouldn't blame you. Lila held his gaze, then looked at Eleanor, who, to her surprise, walked forward and took her hands. My son has made mistakes, she said gently, but none bigger than trying to live a life too clean for real love. Lila blinked. Eleanor continued, but I've watched him change. Slowly, uncomfortably, for you, for her. Her voice dropped. And if they try to drag your name, they'll have to walk through me first. The power in that moment wasn't loud, it was still. It was a mother placing herself between fire and family. Lila nodded once. I don't run, she said. I've had to prove myself in every room since Mia was born. I'm not about to start apologizing now for falling into one that matters. Grayson stepped closer, eyes searching hers. I can't promise this won't get worse before it gets better. No, she said, but I believe you'll fight clean. That's enough for me. A beat passed. Then Calloway's phone buzzed again. He checked it. They're requesting a public statement tonight at the gala, or they'll leak the memo with Vanessa's version by morning. Grayson looked at Lila. She didn't flinch. I'll stand behind you, she said, but I won't stand in front. He nodded. They returned to the ballroom just as the music softened for the evening address. People gathered near the podium, waiting for the CEO's remarks. The usual polished promises, the curated gratitude, the charm. But what came wasn't polished. It was real. Grayson stood before them with no notes, no scripted speech. He told the truth. About the incident from years ago. About why it was handled quietly. About how silence had protected a name instead of owning a misstep. Then, slowly, he spoke of the photo. Not as a defense, but as a turning point. A moment that reminded me, he said, that you can build a flawless reputation and still lose your soul. That it takes more courage to be seen as a human being than as a brand. The room was still. I have made mistakes, he continued, but the one thing I won't regret is the dinner I had on Thanksgiving, because for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't pretending. He looked into the crowd, eyes finding Lila, then Mia, who waved at him without knowing half of what was happening, The audience didn't applaud right away. They didn't know how. Until Eleanor Langford stood and began to clap. Not slowly, not softly, but with conviction. And others followed, one by one, until the ballroom echoed with something that felt like truth finally having its turn. Later, as people trickled toward dessert and wine, Grayson found Lila near the balcony. "You didn't have to stay," he said. "I wanted to see how the story ended." He gave a tired smile. "It hasn't yet." She looked up at him. "I know." He reached into his jacket pocket again, but this time he didn't pull out the old flower. He pulled out something else, a small velvet box. Lila froze. He didn't open it, just held it. "I'm not asking a question tonight," he said, "but I want you to know I'm not building a future that doesn't include both of you." Lila stared at him, then at the box, then back at him. "I'll answer when the flower stops being paper," she said quietly. He smiled. "I guess I'll need to keep folding." Behind them, Mia ran toward her mother, holding a chocolate truffle in one hand and a tiny blue paper flower in the other. "He made me a new one," she beamed. Leela looked down at the crooked petals. It was lopsided, a little wrinkled, but it was love, folded clumsily, offered gently. And in that moment, she knew her answer. But she didn't say it. Not yet. 2 weeks later, the buzz had settled. The headlines cooled, the whispers quieted, and the world, ever fickle, moved on to fresher drama. But for Lila, things hadn't returned to normal. They had become better. Quiet mornings were still quiet. Mia still insisted on star-shaped apples and wore mismatched socks. The bookstore still smelled of coffee, ink, and old paperbacks. But something had changed. It wasn't her world. It was the space in it. There was room now, room for trust, room for love, and if she dared say it, room for someone like Grayson Langford. He hadn't pressured her, hadn't pushed. He'd simply shown up. With Mia's forgotten lunchbox one morning, with coffee just the way she liked it. With an apology when a board member made a dismissive comment and a firm correction that followed in public. He had stopped managing perceptions and started protecting what mattered. That, Lila thought, was the greatest shift of all. And then, one Saturday morning, a small white envelope arrived in the mailbox. Hand-delivered, no stamp. Inside, a card with gold script. One last invitation. No photographers, just you in the garden. No name, but she knew. She showed up wearing a pale blue dress, soft, flowing, hers. Mia skipped beside her in ballet flats and a cardigan, clutching a drawing she'd made for Eleanor. "It's me and you and her," she explained, pointing to the stick figures. "And Grayson is holding a flower, but it's really bad." Lila smiled. "He'll love it." The Langford estate looked different in daylight, less formal, more like home. Eleanor greeted them with tea and warmth. Her silver hair loose today, her eyes sparkling with something softer than pride. "Come," she said. "He's waiting in the garden." They walked through the side path, through hedges and soft gravel, until they reached the greenhouse tucked behind a stone arch. Lila paused when she saw it, dozens of paper flowers. All colors, all sizes, all folded, hanging from branches, resting in pots, tied gently with string to ivy. Mia gasped. Lila blinked. Grayson stood in the center, sleeves rolled to the elbows, a small smudge of paint on his wrist. "I got better at it," he said. "You made all of these?" "I had help," he said, glancing at Mia. "But the crooked ones are mine." Lila stepped forward. "You didn't have to do this." "I wanted to." He reached into his back pocket and handed her something, a small handmade book. Inside, page after page of paper flowers, taped in, flattened, named with dates and little notes. The first one, yellow, said, "The day you said, okay." Lila ran her fingers over it. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "You don't have to say anything," he replied. "Unless you want to." She looked up at him, This man who had once treated her like a complication and now folded flowers for her child. "I never believed I'd have this," she said. Not the attention, not the public mess, but the quiet things, the small kindnesses, the feeling of being chosen, with care. Grayson stepped closer. "I didn't know how to choose anyone," he admitted. "I was raised to win, not to love." "But you love her," he nodded. "I do." "And me," his voice dropped. His voice, barely audible. "Yes, but only if you want me to." Lila took a breath. Then she opened her purse and pulled out the original yellow paper flower, the very one Mia had given Eleanor on the bench, still bent, still creased, still whole. She pressed it into his hand. "I kept mine too," she said. Mia came running up between them, out of breath. "Can we have cake now?" Lila and Grayson laughed together, a sound that didn't feel borrowed or staged. It felt earned, and in that moment they all sat in the garden, under a sky that had once felt too high and now, somehow, reachable. Eleanor watched from the distance, smiling. Later that evening, while the last light faded behind the greenhouse, Lila stood alone with Grayson on the back steps. "I should probably go home," she said, though her voice didn't mean it. "I'll drive you." "You already did." They smiled. Then he looked at her, serious again. "What do we call this?" "This?" she echoed. "This? Us." Lila thought for a moment, then said, "Let's call it not pretending." He leaned in, slow, respectful, still seeking permission in his silence. She met him halfway. Their first kiss was not urgent. It was steady, warm, like something they'd both been walking toward for a long, long time. They pulled back gently, and neither looked away. "I don't need perfect," she whispered. He breathed out a small laugh. "Good. I've never tried to be." She tapped his shoulder gently. "I was talking about you." "I know," he said, softer this time. Inside, Mia had fallen asleep curled against Eleanor, a chocolate stain on her cheek, the drawing still clutched in her hand, and on the table beside her, a folded napkin with a blue flower drawn in crayon, not paper, but close. 3 days later, it arrived. No knock, no dramatic entrance. Just a quiet envelope on the doorstep of Grayson's apartment. No return address, no signature. Inside, a single item, not a letter, not a ring, a flower, but not the crumpled paper kind he'd been folding for weeks. This one was different, soft, white, made of delicate fabric, hand-stitched with tiny seams and a small golden thread running through the center. He held it in both hands, as if it might dissolve in his palms. At the base of the flower, tucked into the petals, a slip of card. It read, "I don't need perfect, I need real. So if you're still folding, I'm still choosing." No grand declaration, just clarity. He smiled, not wide, not loud, but deeply. He pressed the flower to his chest, breathed in the faint scent of lavender, probably from her drawer or her daughter's hair, and he whispered, like it was a promise only the walls needed to hear, "Then I'll keep folding." From the living room, Mia's drawing still hung on the fridge. Stick figures. Lopsided flowers, laughter scribbled between lines, and now this one, real, tangible, chosen. And now, Lila Carter, the girl they whispered about, the woman they judged, the mother they underestimated. She stood in a world that once wondered what she was doing there, and knew now she wasn't fitting in. She was redefining the room, the end. So now I ask you, what would you have done in her place? Would you have walked away after the first whisper, or stayed long enough to show them what real love looks like? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your story too. And if this one touched your heart, give it a like. Subscribe and rate this story from 0 to 10. Until next time, thank you for being part of something real. See you in the next story.